one of the girls came and said, I'm going solo. I was like, oh my God, thank you. I want to do this. And I had been writing other songs, and so one of my songs came out. Ended up being a cult classic. It's called Gangsterling. This is for my homies, people that sing at funerals and all these things. And not that, it was to this day. I just got a video yesterday. But I was like, oh wait, I can do this. Like, this is something. When I got my first check, I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't need a job. This can be my job, and I realized that. But in the interim, like, I had to break it down to my girls, like this, to my girl, because the other one left. Like, this is what I want to do. Music is writing songs. I don't want to be on stage. I don't want to do any of that. And so after leaving New York, I moved back to Oakland for a while because we went copper. And even though I had the success with Gangsta Lane, it was just like, okay, then you have to like really sink your feet in the sand and say, what am I gonna do? Like, so I built these dreams. I've been on manifestation and not just manifestation, but spiritual grounding, and knowing that as a man or a woman thinketh, then so is he or she. And I started to my mom taught me that. And I just kept manifesting, like, okay, I'm gonna meet this person, I'm gonna meet that person. Come to find out, I didn't know about how people find you in publishing. And so I ended up signing with Notting Hill, which I met Kiana, and this was like ages ago, when we were 20s. When we were 19. 40 years ago. And so we met at Notting Hill where I first signed, but I had like all these people wanting to sign me. LA Reid passed on me, but then 2 days later called me back and said, oh my God, I want to sign you. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I already signed with Notting Hill. So he signed my writing partner. And we moved to Atlanta. Everything was great there for a while. And then I found myself just like at a job. I had never had a job. I think maybe a job that my mom made me get when I was like 14 to learn responsibility. Other than that, I'm like, okay, so now I'm working at a furniture store at the Gwinnett Mall. And it was just like, it wasn't horrible because I could write songs all day. And that's what I found, that solace, and just like, okay, I can write it every day, like here, but I do have to get this out somehow. It was kind of like a situation where I wasn't being able to fully express my voice. And I would literally write in the closet when I got home, like set up my microphone in the booth, so my days would be 15 hours long. And there was a little CD going around, and it was like from, I forget Blues Company's name back then, and it had like like all these different producers. You don't know who they are. I picked 3 songs who happened to be produced by the same group of people, which was called ET3 at the time, which was Andre, Big Boy, and a guy named DJ. And so I wrote to these songs, and they were like, oh wow, these are all of our songs. You, like, out of 12 songs, all these different producers, you picked our songs. We ended up writing together, and like endlessly every day. And then the whole thing about performing came up again. And this woman who was Michael Montel Jordan's wife comes to me and she says, hey, I can get you a deal by a week from now. And I'm like, I need $1 million for that to happen. And she did it. Whoa. Everything in a week.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, I gotta perform. But God knows, God honors what we want as well, right? So I was like really blinded by like, okay, is this what I'm supposed to do? They didn't want me to live in Atlanta, so I was like, I'm not moving to LA. So we moved to San Diego, still here. We were in San Diego, recorded this whole album. It was produced by who became like one of my primary writing partners, Raphael Sadiq, Kanye West, and Andre, well, ET3. It was above and beyond anyone's realm of possibility. It was so far out and crazy that I ended up getting like kind of shelved, but kept. It was like coveted because I was not dropped for like 4 years. But I ended up getting dropped, and I was like, okay, that's it. If I ever do this, it's going to be on my own terms. Raphael and I honed in on like many projects, and lots of 2000s era neo soul. He hate me for saying that word neo soul because he's so beyond neo soul. And so we ended up writing together, um, all the time. And then he and I both came to a point where we're like what are we doing? We want to tell other stories, and maybe we should focus on film and TV. It was just a conversation, and at this time, I kind of was wiped out. I was so disappointed in what the music industry was becoming, and how people were taking advantage of people. How you can write a song and everybody's like, it was at the beginning of that when people were like pouncing in on hey, what if someone did that to your house? This is our property. So anyway, that's a whole other passion. And so, long story short, I ended up quitting music, and I became a personal assistant. I called everybody in my in my Rolodex, and I'm like, I want to be an A&R maybe, and no one answered except for Paris Hilton. And I had worked on her first album. And she was like, I don't know about being an A&R, but you can come and be my assistant. And I'm thinking this could be a great opportunity for me to learn about marketing, because she knows marketing.
Yeah, genius.
I worked with her for a while, and then I worked for 2 years. And she was awesome. I learned so much from her. And then I had this someone dangle something in front of me, like, well, you can make 3 times the money. Come over and work for me, and it was for Sean Combs. And so I worked for him for 6 months, and I found my way back to music through that, because it was just regardless of what he has going on right now, he had so much belief in himself. That's what was infectious. And also it was ridiculously embarrassing sometimes for me, or just hard, or just being there for days at a time. I'm like, wait, if I'm gonna live, I'm gonna do this for myself. So I went back to Raphael, and we talked about hey, let's focus on music for TV and film. And we did the TV show The Underground. We did a movie, a musical film, a Christmas film called Black Nativity. And then I started to just build this relationship with that film company, and end up writing, being the lyricist for Rio 2 with Jamie Foxx and Anne Hathaway. And from there, that's what brought me where I am today. Years later, Raphael and I were nominated for the Oscar.
Nice.
2017 in a Golden Globe. And then later I would be nominated for an Emmy, and that's where I am.
Amazing.
Aren't these amazing people? It's so funny. They're actually sitting in the order of who I've known the longest, starting with my right, but I'm still only 29. How does this even happen? Years. They just don't land on me. I don't know. No, but so yeah, my background, it really does. I'm kind of thinking about all of them as I'm thinking about sort of my story. And I started my initial interest in the music business. I actually am a Trojan, fight on. And I was a business major, music industry minor. And my interest in music actually came from my beginnings as a dancer. I was in a lot of musical theater programs, and I was producing a lot of musical or dance or music related projects when I was younger. And so I always felt music. And I want to say that because I want to inspire people who are creative that are also sitting on the business side. I really still believe there is art and talent to being a creative executive, and it's not something that everyone can do. Being able to really identify talent, embody talent, and actually know what to do with it when you come across good talent is an art form. And it is something that should continue to be recognized and not just be taken for granted with the next generation that's coming up. But with that being said, so I felt like my experience in being a dancer, being a young creative person, someone who was in musical theater as a kid, really, I always wanted to direct or produce, or sort of bring the talent together and us work collaboratively to make this really great art. And so for me, when I was at USC, I knew I wanted to be in music, but I also had a deep interest in cinema. So I got my first internship was actually at Paramount Pictures I was a paid intern, which was a thing back in the day. I had so much money. Like, I was like, yes, give me this life. But I did that because I was really interested in television and film even back then. But I was really interested in music, and because of the drive to be more involved with music and being a part of the creative process. I was a poet as a kid, and I always won awards for creative writing. So I had an interest. I didn't necessarily have the vocal chops to be a performer myself, but I had a love for written word. And my initial interest was to actually be, ironically, I'm sitting on a stage full of songwriters, to be a songwriter, but to be a lyricist. And I had this dream when I left SC that I would find a melodic partner, and we would be a writing duo. That was like my thing. But then I was just as equally interested in like producing concerts. So I was like, I'm just gonna believe, it's a faith walk for me as well. I'm just gonna believe in my God and what He has for me and the call on my life. And I'm just gonna always put Him in the front of opportunities and doors that open for me. And then I'm just gonna go with it. But I do know that I'm called to be in this world. So that's kind of how it led to all of the different avenues and all the different reasons I know these people and many of you, is because I've just kind of followed that call to being a creative individual, but someone who helps to produce or organize or bring together. So after I got out of USC, I started at Sony in the television and film department. Ironically, I was assistant number 3. There were 3 of us in Sony soundtracks. Ironically, right? See, like full circle, your life leads you right back to where you started. So I was in Sony soundtracks. They didn't have, because I was assistant number 3, they didn't have a permanent job for me. So I went into the temp pool system, but the HR people at Sony really loved me. And then there was an opportunity to sit at the desk at Epic Records for what would have been like A&R and promotions on the urban side. So that's really how I got my start. I worked on projects like the Barbershop soundtrack, Michael Jackson, You Rock My World, Sade, Lovers Rock. Those were all projects. I was an assistant, so yeah, let's be impressed, but not that impressed. I was an assistant. But those credits, that was me all day, every every name spelled right. It gave me a love and appreciation for the people who create the music and making sure that they were properly recognized. That really is. I know how hard we worked in those studios. I worked on B2K, I was a part of the team that found them, that developed them. So that drew in my love for pop culture. And then from there, I actually started working for British and Canadian companies, working primarily on crossover artists. That's how I met Adam. I actually met Tara first because I went first to Notting Hill. I was a publisher there when they opened up their first office. I was their creative director, and then that's where it was my client. So she definitely was still, I remember the phase of when she was like, I don't know about this music thing, because she was one of the ones that I could count on to send a brief to deliver what the people asked for, but she was kind of she was in a season. So she was like, yeah, I'll get to it, Kiana, but she always answered my call. So when she started doing the TV film stuff, I was not surprised. I was like, I know it, girl. She was always great with the pen. But I met Autumn because I was working on the Lewis project, and we were looking for new writers, and Stargate was a producing team that was really working with us, and that's how we found Autumn. And Autumn, I trekked through London, had some good girl time, some good studio time. She's right about Swiss. We were in the studio when he made Fancy. We have a whole lot of history to that creative process. But A&R taught me a lot about making a project and finding stuff for an artist. But even in my time at Notting Hill and my time at Psycho, I was interested in television and film. I was looking for opportunities. I developed a television and film catalog when I was at Notting Hill, and then when I was at Psycho, I actually found the song that Leona Lewis performed in the Tyler Perry movie, his version of For Color Girls. Because shout out to my mom. My mom, when I was younger, I was really into that story, and she gave me that the choreo poem, which is their book, but it's a choreo poem. I was really into the story, so when it was coming, I was like, oh no, I got to get a song in this movie, and so I found the Leona Lewis song. And then from there, I was at Psycho, and they decided to let go of the U.S. office. I was an A&R by then, a record label A&R. And I was under contract, which is talking about just believing in yourself, right? I was under contract, and I'm gonna try to make it quick. I'm sorry, we're all telling these great stories, and you look up and the time is right here in your face. Because I was under contract, I felt like God had given me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do because I had the resource to like be at ease. God had money to like everyone, all my friends were like, "Oh, you gotta travel the world." I was like, "I've seen a lot of the world, but when am I gonna get, a nice chunk of change to just like pursue my dream?" And so they were still having to honor that contract, even though the company had closed. But it allowed for me to invest in myself, and that's how I birthed Cue the Creatives. That was in 2010. And initially, I was an independent publisher. I did independent A&R. And that was good, and that's a different type of hustle for a different panel on a different day. But that is really where it brought me back full circle. Had that same kind of like moment of what do I really want to do? Where do I really want to sink my teeth into? And I always loved the marriage of music for television and film, music and media. So I just started focusing on that, from doing a documentary and working with T-Boz, doing a documentary on TLC, to developing and pitching stuff for television and film, to contacting all of my TV and film contacts that I had developed at these other two places and pitching myself as a music supervisor. And at the time, my client was Kwame, old school Kwame, who had become a producer. And we had this opportunity. One of my college best friends was an independent filmmaker. She's now on Amazon Music, but she was an independent filmmaker at the time. And they wanted Kwame to come and be the music supervisor. But I was like, he can't be the music supervisor, but he can be the film music producer. And if you take us as a team, which Kwame was all behind, like we were like, we're just gonna tag team it. We're gonna make sure the music, all of the original music is great. So we did this movie for Lifetime. That was my first project as a music supervisor, where I was credited. It was called Seasons of Love. It was a movie that was back behind, I'm forgetting her name. But Method Man, LaToya Luckett, and the incomparable Gladys Knight were in it, and it just really gave me an opportunity to like be my own producer, music supervisor voice, and that was the beginning of everything. From there, I did some stuff for Lionsgate. I did a bunch of independent films during the pandemic. After that, I went to work at the Grammys, which that's a whole different conversation. I'll come talk to you about that later. Or you can email me at losangeles@grammy.com. Those of y'all got my number, y'all know I always throw that out there. You can email me there. We can talk Grammy talk all the time. But in that same time, that season, I was missing being creative. And so I, again, kind of went back inside and had a conversation with the Lord. And was like, I really enjoy A&R. I really enjoy working with artists. I really enjoy making stuff for TV and film. And if there's still some time, can you give me that opportunity? And one of the independent filmmakers that I had worked with, his producer had not even talked to on that film, just remembered me and how much they liked working with me. And then Showtime had developed a show called Flatbush Misdemeanors. And they were looking for a music suit. And so she pitched me, and that brought me into the world of TV, which I love doing music supervision for television films. So I did that. I did The Hair Tales, which was an Onyx Collective, freeform Disney project with Oprah Winfrey, and Tracee Ellis Ross is the EP on that. And I currently have a project coming out with Heartbeat and BT Plus called Little Kev. It's an animated feature based on Kevin Hart's life. That was just announced Grammy week.
Okay.
You have to know it's coming. So animation as well. So that's my story.
We're gonna, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna join you on stage, but I'm Gil Robertson from AAFCA, presenting this event. We want you guys to come back in June during Black Music Month to sort of really look at TV, since we're in film season. But what I'd like to do the back half of the conversation, since we only have about 15, 20 minutes, is to offer to our audience the ABCs of how to get in. Okay. Because what I've discovered and what prompted me to pitch this to Skylar and the team at the Grammy Museum is the lack of people of color, Black people specifically, who occupy the positions and the creative spaces that the four of you are doing so well at. So if we could dedicate this last pocket of conversation around that, I I want to provide the audience with some strong takeaways.
That's great, yeah. Well, who wants to kick us off?
I'll kick us off so we can just jump through that and then maybe still do the Q&A?
Yeah, we'll save questions for at the end, Spencer, yeah.
So my quick 1, 2, 3, definitely as a music supervisor, I think, the way to get in, it's kind of what we're all saying, it's about knowing your relationships, building upon those, being assertive without being annoying, like that's really a talent as well. And then particularly for music supervisors, credits, I mentioned that in terms of like my love and appreciation for them. But truly, there's so much information, so much access to information about music supervisors. And we may not always be working on a project, but we are always like next in line for another project. So, it's also understanding if you want to know like where do I find a music supervisor, my number one recommendation is like start with the projects that you like, right? And look through those credits. You can find it on IMDb. You can watch the credits on that television show. You don't have to skip to the next episode on Netflix. You can just watch through the credits. But most people that are doing what we do are accessible in social media, and or if you have like IMDb or access to IMDb Pro, our points of contact, an agent, a manager, an attorney. It's pretty easy to reach out to. For me in particular, I always tell people I'm still an A&R person, I'm old school. I like to see musicians in their environment, so I love when people invite me to like concerts or shows and stuff they have. But you can also send me a link, but don't be offended if I don't like get right back. Music supervisors are usually going through hundreds and hundreds of pieces of music when they're on an active project, so they really only have the bandwidth to respond to things that work for what they're looking for and still may not even make it, but just be patient. And then my last advice would be, particularly those who are interested in being a music supervisor, the Guild of Music Supervisors is a great organization that helps to develop aspiring as well as established music supervision community. And so if that's something that you want to be in this particular job, definitely check into GMS. They have an award show this week. But also, they're a great organization for like DEI support. My current assistant on Little Kev, she was my DEI mentee, so like we hit it off and she's gotten work out of it. So, that would be my recommendation for Music Soup.
I'd like to echo that a bit. Music supervisors are so important, and I just gave advice to someone who DM'd me the other day, is if you can, whatever show you can hear yourself on, like it's important to like see yourself like in every way, to see yourself as a success. But when you see yourself, like if Insecure was something that you would be, or Harlem, or one of the TV shows like that, if your music could live on that, you reach out to the music supervisor, not just that music supervisor, that's just your starting place, but also all of the other music supervisors that when you Google them and you come up with like one name, like Kiana, you may come up with Morgan Rhodes, and you come up with Carolyn Owens, or you come up with, there's a bunch of music supervisors who are always listening to music. And they may not have it, especially when they don't have a project going, is great, because then you've caught them at a time where they really, really, really are listening, and looking for something to, someone to break, even quite possibly. Also networking and just making sure that, but not just networking with your peers, because I think that's like something that innately happens, but getting out there and not just like this Music Supervisors Guild, but also like the Songwriters, Composers, and Lyricists, is called SCL. They have great events. The AAFCA is the Alliance of Women Film Composers. If you're a woman, please, please, please join, because there's so many of us that we just end up, what I hate to meet is a woman who's older and say, I wish I could have been. Like, there's no need to wish later if you just take some steps right now. And not be afraid to approach people, because sometimes you think, oh my God, that's the head of Sony Creative or music, the music division. So what? Go up and say hello. Get to know assistants. As a former assistant, everyone that really, really hounded me in a how did you put it, like in a non-annoying way, I was able to connect them with the people that I was working for if I saw fit, in industries that I wasn't even, really, that I knew a lot about. So I think assistants are key, as well as just being fearless and reaching out to different people that are part of different projects. And all, of course, like really getting to know your fellow songwriters, supporting them, going to their shows. If you have a show, just making it known and inviting the community out.
Can I shout out really quickly one other organization? We're both founding members of the Black Women in Media Collective. So I have to shout out us. And the three music supervisors that she mentioned are also founding members of that organization. So you can find us on BWMC Collective. I think it's .collective or either _collective on IG. So please look out for us. We do make known who are Black women that are active on the sync side. Of music, so.
I'm learning a lot from you, both of you. I love this. So, kind of everything that I've gotten, now that I'm like listening and thinking about it, the biggest advice I can have is make sure you can self-record. Make sure you have your team ready for when opportunity does come. So, and also, when you have an idea that you feel something special about it, do it. And all of those things have helped me. So like, gosh, I had a baby in August, and like, I'm not kidding, 2 or 3 weeks later, I got an opportunity to write for a documentary, and I already had the song written. And it was something that I just laid down when I had the idea, but I never fully produced it. There was no way, like no way in hell I could have been in that headspace to write that song at that moment, but all I had to do was a vocal. I never left my house. I recorded my whole vocal, did the BVs, everything, sent the files, got it mixed. I already had a team, I already had a string team, I already had a producer, I had everything in line to make that happen, with me basically not being able to leave my house. And without that, there's no way I would have been able to have the opportunity. It's impossible. So like those things help me a lot. Kind of just like knowing your skill set as well. Like I did a song for this documentary called First Wave with John, and he knows what I do, I know what he does, so he did his part and he just left. And he was like, finish the song. I'm like, where are you going? But that's great, right? So like pretty much all the things I've done, even when we worked together, I recorded at home. And by the way, I recorded it, like you don't have to have expensive equipment. I remember at that time I had like a PreSonus mic that they gave to me. That mic was literally $100 and it was great. And those are the vocals that were used on the actual TV show. You don't need like crazy stuff. Like I recorded on a $100 mic with an Apollo and Logic that I was not very good at. Thankfully, I mean, I'm sure you have to really work with those vocals, but like, yeah. But kind of that's the advice I can have. Just be prepared for opportunity. When you have a great idea, lay it down. Don't just say, oh, I'll do it later. Lay it down then, because you never know when you're gonna need it again. And have your teams ready so that when things are quick and you need to go, you're like, boom, can we do this and like get this done in 2 days, 3 days, whatever.
Yeah, it's always a complex question when people ask like how to get in and what advice you would give. I think one of the through lines I'm hearing from all of us is long lasting relationships. And I can specifically speak to what Autumn is just referring to in that situation. When I was thinking about, man, I need to get this episode 9 done ASAP. It was a very important, thematically driven episode, and I knew that Autumn would deliver. Like there wasn't a question. And you know, that's obviously outside the scope of our friendship, but just professional relationship. I knew she would be able to deliver and add that value. And then vice versa for the people who put me in charge of the music of the show. At that point, I had a long-term relationship with Fayez, got to deliver like the #1 record in the country at that time on television, which if you know how music supervision works, you know how deals are made. These are hard things to do. So our showrunner saw that value add that I was able to bring and entrusted me with more opportunity. And so I, like what's coded and all that just is like everybody's saying appears, add the value that you can, but be reliable, to be dependable, but also be able to deliver quickly, especially in television. Film it, you have a little bit more time usually. I mean, I've had to score a movie before in 3 weeks, which is ridiculous. But television, usually for a film, you've had more time. But a television show, especially an episodic weekly show, man, you're just having to make that music fast. And I know music supervisors often, they want to know their composers can deliver, they want to know their sync team, their songwriters, when they think of an idea for a scene or a brief that they have, that you can deliver quickly. So it's not just having the relationship and maintaining the relationship, but delivering for the relationship. That will open up doors that you can't imagine, because as your peers elevate and as they get into positions of power, they're gonna wanna be able to deliver for the people who brought them into position, and then they know they can count on you, you're in. And I would say the other part about this is, combining the many hats that we've all had to wear from these long stories that you've heard. You've heard from dancing to Christian rapping to, selling sneakers, to eventually being Oscar nominated, and Autumn didn't tell you, but she won Grammy for Album of the Year. And these are opportunities that come as a result of being prepared and being able to deliver for people who give you an opportunity when they give it to you. It's not about waiting, like, hey, can I please? It's like, no, you get the opportunity and you deliver. And I would say the other thing I think that's heavy on my heart is I think we are all products of different forms of this business. And I think it's not even an elephant in the room, right? We all see it. It's right here. It's the inevitable digital landscape that's altered via generative AI and other things. And I think now you can make. And I say that everywhere I go. Like, I'm officially a television producer, not because somebody gave me an opportunity, because I had an idea, I made it, and I pitched it to somebody I delivered for. Now you have the tools to consistently make. And whether that comes on in a large format project, whether you're just doing it for yourself or not, there's gonna be distribution mechanisms that can allow you to monetize that, right? They may not exist easily today, but they're coming. And so create the opportunities you want. Create the stories you feel like you are made to tell, because there's nobody else made to tell them, especially for us. Create the stories you are made to tell, and there will always be somebody that wants to hear them. Wow.
Thank you, sir. I want to give a chance to come to you all to see if we have any questions in the audience. We have one right here. Do we have a mic, Danny? Are you in? Actually, I think we have one. Okay. But we can, you can take my mic. How about that? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for speaking to all of us. One of the questions that I have, we all love the creative process. The biggest challenge these days, as far as I see it, is how could you possibly make money chasing your passion? I'm very involved in the Guild of Music Supervisors, and we try to establish, by way of example, minimum thresholds for supervisors. But we had a really difficult time. I was up for a project where I was supposed to be supervisor, and I gave a really good rate. Somebody came in and quoted half the price. Now, I don't know how they can even make money doing it, so just throwing it out to the panel. How do you pursue your passion at the same time, be able to make enough money to pay your bills?
Can I jump on this one first?
Go right ahead.
So I have a very, very passionate response to this exact part, because as a composer, mind you, that's my main hat currently. There has been a trend to, take whatever you can to do the job. And what that does is it undercuts the overall, it's like rising tides raise all ships, they say, but when you lower the tide, then there's no water anymore for anybody, right? And I think the very real introspective conversation we have to have is the businesses are changing, right? The business that you quoted that for at that time is no longer the same business, because you cannot do that job for the same money. And then, also, there's bespoke creators for me in my job, right, as a composer. There's a specific filmmaker who will ask me to make a custom project for them and pay me the rate that I deserve, because they know what it takes. And they're only gonna call me for the jobs that they have the money to do that for, if that makes sense. Now, if it's a job that's a library gig, I think those jobs are completely gonna go away, because generative AI has made it so cheap that you could prompt a scene that would normally be a queue for $200, $500, $1,000. Like, those jobs, I think, are going. And as the music supervisor of those projects, I think those budgets are significantly decreasing. My answer to that, again, is to make, right? It's literally now we have the tools to make. There's going to be such a ubiquitous amount of creativity gone into these ways that you can create and get your ideas out, that's the only way that you're gonna be able to maintain. On the side of that that's why we all have 3 jobs. That's the other answer, right? Like being able to record yourself, being able to engineer, being able to produce and compose, and then deliver television shows. Like, it's ridiculous that we have to do all this just to be able to maintain a decent living. But that's the truth and the reality of the economic structure of our businesses now. I'm hopeful that post-fire, we will get some federal aid to bring back what Hollywood has been from those days where you could get $1 million in a week. What?
Right?
Man, me and all of us sitting here looking at each other like, God, I wish I was popping in those days. I was not popping in those days. But I'm saying that to say, I'm hopeful and optimistic that there's an economic shift, specifically in this city, that becomes ubiquitous for our business. Because our business needs an influx of real capital and the ability for legends like yourself to be able to continue to get the pay that allowed you to have a decent lifestyle. Autumn and I serve on a board of an organization called SONA, Songwriters of North America, and that is one of our main impetuses to move forward, is that songwriters and composers need to be able to make a decent living, right? Like, it is now a time where you have to do other things. You can no longer just write songs and live a comfortable life. And we're not talking about a house in Beverly Hills. We're talking about an apartment in this city, right? And you can't even afford it. And eggs are $12.99. So all that I'm saying is I'm hopeful. I think there will be, I'm hoping that we'll get some real federal assistance to bring economic components back to the city so the tides will raise back. And those of you who are young and coming in the business, I can't tell you not to take that music supervisor job for $1,000, right? Because if I was starting out, I would have to take it. Right? I think it's incumbent upon us who've been around a while to continue to make so that we can also raise the tide.
Excellent. I like that answer. Yes.
Yes, come with it, Mike.
I didn't mean to hog that question, though.
That was great.
Good afternoon.
It's on.
Hi.
There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name